Riddle's gaze swept the corridor. Sensing the disruption in the air, he turned to face the source, only to find nothing. He raised an eyebrow, suspicion etched on his face. "Hiding, are we?" he said quietly. As you remained hidden, Tom's curiosity only intensified. He couldn't shake the feeling that someone was nearby. His eyes scanned the corridor once again, this time focusing intently on where he knew you were standing. As you stepped out, Tom's expression shifted, his eyes narrowing. "Out of the shadows I see," he said, his tone measured. His gaze lingered on you, assessing the situation. Tom gestured for you to step into the light, his gaze calculating. He observed you intently, his eyes flitting down to assess your outfit with subtle interest. Tom's gaze roved over you, his eyes taking in every detail. His focus was sharp, missing nothing. He noted the unbuttoned shirt, the skirt riding up to reveal more of your legs than usual, the tie wrapped around your neck with a certain charm. His eyes lingered on the exposed skin, a faint glint in his gaze hinting at subtle intrigue as he assessed your attire. Tom's voice cut through the quiet air with an authoritative edge. "Hold on, where are you headed? And why the unbuttoned shirt and exposed legs in this damp weather? It's rather unusual." His gaze was piercing, his tone demanding a truthful answer. Tom took a step forward, his eyes fixed on you. "It's cold out, and you're not even wearing a proper robe," he pointed out, his tone slightly tinged with disapproval. "It would be wise to button up, or at least wrap yourself in a scarf. You won't get very far without catching a cold." His gaze held a hint of genuine concern, though it was subtle and masked by his usual stern demeanor. Tom's tone sharpened, his impatience finally showing through. "Either you button up that shirt right now, or I'll do it for you," he said firmly. His jaw was tight, his gaze unwavering, showing that he wouldn't hesitate to follow through on his statement. Tom's eyes narrowed as a smirk played on your lips. He let out a low hum of annoyance, clearly not finding your resistance amusing. "You have a peculiar way of challenging authority," he noted, his voice tinged with a mix of irritation and intrigue. "You should know that disobedience won't go unaddressed," he added, a hint of steel in his tone. "Consider this a warning. I suggest you comply before I decide on an appropriate consequence." As he finished speaking, he watched you intently, his patience wearing thin. As you buttoned up your shirt, Tom's eyes met yours, his gaze steady and unblinking. "Much better," he commented, his tone carrying a touch of satisfaction. He regarded you for a moment, his expression guarded yet hinting at a rare moment of approval for your compliance. "You do well to listen to advice when it's given," he added, the corners of his lips hinting at a faint, almost unnoticeable smirk. Tom's gaze lowered, his eyes tracing the length of your skirt. A subtle glance, almost imperceptible, lingered on the way the fabric clung to your exposed thighs. A flicker of curiosity sparked in his eyes, though his expression remained impassive. He knew it was inappropriate to dwell on such thoughts, and yet the sight held a certain allure that his disciplined mind struggled to resist. Tom's gaze returned to your face, and a question formed in his mind. His tone was laced with subtle confusion and concern. "May I inquire why you've chosen to wear your skirt in that manner? It's quite unconventional, especially in the current weather." His brows furrowed slightly, hinting at his efforts to decipher your intentions behind such a choice. Tom's eyes darkened, his expression hardening at your dismissive response. A faint hint of irritation flickered in his gaze. "Oh, but it is my business," he countered, his voice cool and authoritative. "As a prefect, it's my job to ensure the well-being and decorum of the students. So I'll ask again, why choose an outfit that could lead to catching a cold? It seems rather careless, don't you think?" Tom's eyes narrowed slightly at your eye roll, a hint of annoyance evident in his expression. He maintained his stern demeanor, his voice firm yet calm. "If you prefer not to answer, that's fine," he said, a touch of resignation lacing his tone. "However, I must remind you that disregarding common sense or established guidelines often leads to consequences. It would be advisable to reconsider your choices. His tone held a veiled warning, emphasizing the gravity of his words. Tom's gaze sharpened, his tone firm and unyielding. Your skirt is too revealing, and it's distracting from the seriousness of this conversation, he stated, his voice leaving no room for argument. I suggest you pull it down and focus on the matter at hand. His eyes bore into yours, unwavering. He clearly expected immediate compliance before the conversation could continue. Tom's gaze lingered on the sight of you pulling down your skirt, his eyes tracing every subtle movement. A hint of satisfaction flickered across his face, though he maintained a cool exterior. Better, he remarked, his tone slightly less stern than before. Now, let's address the real issue at hand. He shifted his focus back to the task at hand, signaling that the topic of your attire was, for the moment at least, resolved. As you attempted to leave, Tom's voice cut through the air once more, stopping you in your tracks. Wait, he said, his tone commanding, his gaze fixated on you, a mixture of curiosity, concern, and authority. Before you go, I have a question. What were you doing in Slytherin territory so late at night? It's highly unusual for a Ravenclaw to be wandering around these parts. Tom's gaze narrowed as he observed your reaction. Oh, surprised I figured it out, he said, his tone laced with a touch of amusement. You may have been wearing a Slytherin tie, but I assure you, your identity was not concealed from me. His eyes gleamed with understanding, conveying that he was well aware of your true house. Now, care to answer my question? He asked, his tone firm, awaiting your response. As you remained silent, Tom's expression hardened. His hand moved with lightning-fast reflexes, seizing your tie with a firm grip. He tugged gently on the fabric, pulling you closer with an air of authority. If you're going to borrow a tie, you could at least tie it correctly, he muttered, his voice tinged with a mix of disapproval and intrigue. Without wasting a moment, Tom's skillful hands set to work, skillfully knotting the tie around your neck with precision and expertise. Tom's hands paused for a moment at your soft admission, his eyes meeting yours with a shrewd, assessing look. Party, you say, he mused quietly, resuming the task of adjusting your tie with practiced ease. And what purpose does a Ravenclaw have at a Slytherin party? His tone held a blend of curiosity and suspicion, indicating that he was not entirely convinced by your explanation. Tom's gaze met yours, unflinching and unwavering. A hint of a smirk played on his lips, and the way he looked down at you conveyed a sense of quiet superiority. No, you don't have to explain everything, he replied, his voice low and measured. However, I'd suggest being truthful when you share your reasons. It would make navigating this conversation significantly easier for us both. His piercing eyes studied you intently, waiting for your answer. Tom's expression remained guarded as he finished adjusting the tie. Ah, Draco, he said, his tone almost dismissive. What business does a Ravenclaw have with a Slytherin like him? Surely you could find more suitable company. His eyes scrutinized you, searching for any sign of evasion or deception. Tom's gaze narrowed at your remark, a flicker of annoyance passing briefly across his eyes. Jealous. Hardly, he responded, his voice tinged with a subtle edge. I simply question your motives and the company you keep. Just remember that actions have consequences, even within the walls of Hogwarts. He leaned closer, his tone dropping to a whisper. And trust me, I will be keeping a close eye on your activities. Tom's brows furrowed slightly, a glimmer of surprise flickering in his eyes at your response. You think you can manage on your own, do you? Remember, he leaned in closer, his voice growing quieter and more guarded. Slytherins are adept at navigating the complexities lurking in the shadows. You may not always see what's coming, and I'd rather you be prepared. You'll find that having allies is sometimes the difference between success and failure. His words carried a note of caution, mixed with genuine concern, despite his usual demeanor. Tom observed your defensive gesture, his gaze unwavering. "Tell me," he began, his tone firm and commanding. "Why are you involving yourself with Draco? What is it you hope to achieve by mingling with Slytherins?" His eyes locked onto yours, his gaze penetrating and searching. It was clear that he expected an honest and detailed answer this time, not another evasive response. Tom's gaze remained steady as he continued, his voice carrying an undercurrent of concern. "Draco's reputation is well known, both within Slytherins and outside," he stated, his tone measured. "His past relationships have a pattern of ending abruptly, and those who get too close risk being hurt. I want to ensure you're aware of the potential implications. Entering a relationship with him can have its own set of challenges." Tom's expression held a note of caution, his eyes locked onto yours, awaiting your response. Tom's gaze moved over you once more, his keen eyes scanning your uniform, taking in every detail. His mind seemed to recall your earlier disheveled look, and his expression turned slightly disapproving. "Don't tell me you rolled up your skirt and unbuttoned your shirt for him?" he questioned, his tone tinged with annoyance. His eyes bore into yours, seeking an explanation for such behavior. Tom's gaze followed you as you stormed off, his expression a mix of annoyance and concern. He sighed heavily, muttering under his breath. As always, Ravenclaws, stubborn and impulsive. He watched you move away, pondering your actions, and wondering about the secrets you harbored. Tom's footsteps grew quieter as he trailed after you, his mind consumed with thoughts of your actions and potential motives. He muttered almost to himself, "That little bird, so naive." A hint of frustration laced his voice, mingling with a touch of concern. "She can't survive out there on her own tonight." As he followed, he decided to keep an eye on you from a distance, ensuring your safety, but remaining aloof and detached from the events unfolding. Tom's mind wrestled with conflicting emotions as he trailed you. His protective instincts clashed with his usual aloof demeanor. He muttered under his breath, "Why do I even care? She made her choices. Why should I involve myself?" Despite his words, a part of him couldn't shake the worry that gnawed at his thoughts. He watched you with guarded eyes, torn between detachment and the desire to safeguard you from potential harm.